I need to make sure I want
Okay. One of the concepts which is fundamental to object orientation is inheritance. So we looked at, and by now you should be very comfortable with just the idea of how inheritance works, parent-child. So what we had set up was we had this app user, and one of the things we mentioned, and I think it was Cecilia who brought this up, so when we were creating email, phone number, and so on, those are not attributes specified in application user. So where are they coming from? User full name is the only property or attribute that we have assigned to application user. So other than Cecilia, somebody else, because you already told me this last time. So where are these other properties: email, phone number, security stamp, username, which are all corresponding to, if you go into ASP.NET users, you'll see all of these properties over here. So where are they coming from? Okay, somebody decide.
Identity models.
Identity models. Identity models is what?
It's coming from the application user.
The identity models is a file name. Is it a class? So there are two classes inside of identity models. One is application user, which only has this property defined. So where are all these others coming from? It says if say anyone on this side, Cody.
They're coming from the entity framework or the database.
What's this telling you?
That's inheriting from identity user.
Yeah, identity user. So it's basically coming from the parent class. And so this is, identity user is the parent of application user. And so application user is able to get the properties that belong to its parent. And then we created student as being a child of application user, which meant that we could access the properties that were in the parent, which is application user, and its parent. So we can go however many levels. So that's one concept of inheritance, that you can go down multiple levels with the child, as long as so one of the things that this is at least to explain or to get a sense of the properties inherited down the chain. So let's see, here is my child. Okay, so inside of student, let's say I want to get the student's full name. What could I do? Just as an example. So calculate student GPA would have. how do I get the full name? This dot, okay, this dot, user full name, right? So this is, I'll have to set it to some string. I'll just say name. Okay. Now, if I change what allows this to happen, it's this public setting. If I were to change this to private, let's see what happens. What happened to this?
It won't allow you to access it.
It won't allow you to access because I changed the, what is this called? Access type or access level, access security. So if I change it from public to private, it prevents the child from being able to see it. But if there's an in-between level between private and public, what's that level in between the two? If you're going for interviews and you're going to say, I know object orientation, this is one of the concepts you have to be aware of. What's the level in between? What's it? Static is whether the method belongs to or a property belongs to the class or the object. So, yeah. What's it? Protects it. Good. So it's in between private and public. So so if you now go down to the child, it sees it's a protected means that it's visible in the child, but not in any of the other classes. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. It's anytime you have inheritance, if you want a property or a method to be just seen by the child classes and not anywhere outside, then you go with the protected access.
Can child classes see into each other?
So you're asking whether a student can see into instructor. The answer is no. So anything common has to be up the chain where it is shared. Once you're down, you cannot go across siblings. So this is public. Okay, so that's one concept that I wanted to, and I gave an example here that I just wanted to show you that other than that, the one other thing that we will be doing today is security, role-based security and authorization. Well, but I first want to go over the polymorphism concept, which is associated with inheritance. So, but how we get to role-based security is we had and I'll show you this. If you were to just run this on the web page, you don't see an option to log in, and we had removed it because our screen was okay. Right here we had the option to log in. So what do we need to do to reactivate that? Where is it provided? It's in the layout, which references this login. So if you go into layout, if you had done what I did, which was to comment out this segment here, so what we want to do is, you don't necessarily want to uncomment everything, but where it says partial, login partial, it calls this CS/HTML file. So I want to put the comment ending here, so the asterisk and the @ symbol. So this says this plot is now outside of the commented section. So if I save this file, go back and refresh, I should be able to see these two options, and you'll have to activate this so that you should be able to log in, register. We'll look at this a little later, but login is something we'll have to do today. Okay, and we'll come to that piece. Okay. So with inheritance, the reason that I brought that up is I want all of you to have, so instead of Michael Jordan, we are going to take away Michael Jordan and create him as test student. I'm going to take away the space. So this will become the password, because how do I know that this is going to become the password? I set the password. If you go into your identity model under the constructor for application user, I said the password is going to be, it hashes the user's full name. So that's going to become the password. So to make it easy, and obviously I'm asking all of you to publish your application on Azure. So if you have password protection, I need to be able to get in. So that's why I'm asking you to create, at least for me, most of my data is for Michael Jordan, who now becomes test student. So the username is the same as the password, so test.student at wvu.edu, and then the password is test student. Actually, to make it even easier, I'm going to remove that dot, so I'll just copy paste when I'm logging in. So test student at wvu.edu, test student, and then, so that's for the student, and similarly for the instructor, I'm going to go into the instructor class and have a constructor there as well. Well, not the constructor, where I'm populating the instructor, and I'm going to create a new instructor as test instructor. The same concept here, test instructor. So this will be test instructor. I'll just change this to something slightly. Okay, so I'll have two instructors. Okay, I'll save this. What should I do next? I'll have to update the database, so I'll roll it back and roll it forward, so okay, so let me just make sure I have my ASP.NET users. Okay, I have my test student and my test instructor. Okay, the next piece is the, so I've activated it, but to get to this plot I have to do a little more work. But before that, I wanted to discuss this concept of polymorphism, which which is tied to inheritance, except that it is behavior. So whenever you are dealing with behavior, you are mostly dealing with, you could have properties having behavior, but it's really methods. So methods. So poly is it's a term, I guess. Polymorphism is from chemistry. It's something that shows multiple forms. So you are going to have one method that exhibits different behavior, different forms of behavior. So how do we go about doing it? Well, when we say one method, we will first define this method in the parent. So, and I'm going to use a method I'll just call something like get user details. So this is going to be first established with the parent, and then the child, each of the child classes is extended. So why does this make sense? Well, if you look at the parent app user, what does app user have? Like if you're going to get user details, let's say I want to know the user's name as well as what role that they are in. The particular roles they are in, I can get for each of them through the application user. I can get the user's full name through the application user. But what can I not get for a user that's one of the child classes? Let's say the student class. What would I not be able to get? What information pertaining to the user who's a student will I not be able to get from application user? The GPA, because the GPA is only in the child, the student child object. Similarly, what is the information I won't be able to get for an instructor object? Office location. So now I could either create 3 different methods to do this, but if I create 3 different methods, I'll have to keep checking if application user used the first method, if student used the second, if instructor used the third. I don't want to do that. I want to use the same method, one method, but that's going to exhibit different behavior based on which object is it. It's either an application user object or a student or an instructor object. Okay. So the way we go about doing it is we'll set this up first at the parent level as a virtual object, as a virtual method. So if you go into the parent class over here, I'll set it up right at the top so you can see it. Public, you have to create it as a virtual method. And I'm going to get the user details. I'm just going to return a string. I'll call it user details, no parameters, because it's just pertaining to one object at a time. And there are 2 pieces I want to get. One is I can set this, the simplest thing is to set a variable like string, I'll call it user details. I'll initialize it as an empty string because I'll keep adding to this. And then I need to return user details. Okay. Within this, I want to do 2 things. I want to get the role for the user, and we'll discuss that in a little bit, but right now we have the ASP.NET users. We haven't as yet defined roles, so you have this table called ASP.NET roles, if you right click and try to open it, right now there is nothing in there. So what we'll do is we will create some roles, student, instructor, maybe advisor later on. But for now, we don't yet define it, but we will, and we want to get the role that a user is in. So we can get that information here. It's a little, there is a little bit of work that you have to do. So you can also, if you also want the user's full name, you can actually get that from here. So we can say something like user details. Actually, I can do it even simpler. I want the full name of the user, so I always will get that. So I'll get this user full name instead of, and then I will say user full name is in roles, and this is where it becomes a little more tricky, because the roles that the user is in, what type of association is there between roles and users? So you have ASP.NET users, you have ASP.NET roles. I don't know if I can increase this of this. Okay. Is there some points? Okay, I'm not sure I can increase the size of this, but you have ASP.NET roles, ASP.NET users. How are they connected? Yeah, ASP.NET user roles. So this is what type of association or relationship? Many to many. So that's what makes it a little more complex here. So what we have to do is we have to go to the database to get this information. Trying to think of how to make it, whether I should first set up the roles and then, okay, I'll set this up. Application DB context, so I go to the database. So inside the database, I need to look for, you basically get each user's roles. So I can say for each, and I will also set up the body inside here. And this is where it's a little bit, you have to be, it takes, so we are looking at this particular user and all the roles that user is in. And so we cannot directly get the name of the user roles. So we are going to have to look inside something called an identity user role. So this is what connects a user with the role, and there could be many of these roles in which a particular user is in. So I have to say each role. So there are multiple of the roles that is the many-to-many association between the user and the role. Okay. So for each of them, we want to pull out the name of the role. So this is, and for which you first have to get at, let's see how to do this. I first need to define something called the identity role, which is the actual role itself. So inside, I need to get each role. So I need to find each role dot role ID. Okay. Now, Now this is just the ID of the role in which the user is. So if the user is in 2 different roles, we'll get 2 different IDs. But the name of these roles are not accessible to us. They are only accessible on the database here, right? So what do I need to do? I need to go to the database and find it. If you can find, one of the things I'm a little wary of is going to the database inside a loop. So if you can find a more efficient way of doing it, let me know. But for now, the only way I know to do this is to call the database and call roles, the table, and then do what? Do a find operation. And what am I finding? Using the role ID. Okay. So, and then from there I can get the role name property. And this has to go on the right side. So what am I adding this role name to? To the user details. So I don't say user details equal, what should I say? I want to keep adding to it. How do I keep adding? Plus equal. Okay. So and if I have multiple roles, I might want to separate it with something like a space or comma or something else. But for now, just for simplicity, I'll use the space. Okay. So basically, this will say the parent method is saying this user is in these roles. Okay. Okay. So now once I have this, the second part is, so this is going to be common to all users, regardless of whether they are student or instructor. Now, if I go to the, let's say, instructor class, and again, I'm going to do it somewhere near the top so you can see it. Just before the constructor, I will say public override, and as soon as I type in override and the space bar, it gives you all the properties and methods that can be overridden from one of the parent or grandparent classes. Okay. But the one that I want to override is which one? The one from app user, which is get user details. And as soon as I do it, what does it do? It gives me the signature along with saying return base type. Now, I don't want to just return the base. I want to add on to it. So I'm going to say string. Again, I can just call it by the same name. And I'm not going to return this directly, but I'm going to say I'm starting with the base, and then I'm going to add on. So what am I returning? Whatever I accumulate into this, right? So user details. And what is specific to instructor? The office location, right? So I'm going to say like string user details. I want to add this on, so it's going to be plus equals, and I'll leave a space and say office location colon plus okay, I don't want to redeclare this, it's just okay, so I'm basically getting the details specific to the instructor from the child class. And I do the same thing with the student class. So I go to student and I say, you got this, right? You understand this? Yes? No? Okay. At the end, somewhere down the end of the class, I am going to come around to make sure you have this working. And next Thursday, or when I'm checking this on your publication on Azure, I obviously would like to see this working. So the concept with the student is what? Again, I want to override user details, and I'll put it in the same space where I put this instructor student just before the constructor. Public override. I'm overriding get user details. Okay, and what's specific to student? The student GPA, right? So user details plus equals space GPA colon space plus student GPA. Okay. So basically, instead of creating three different so we have one method that's in the parent that's being inherited by or extended by the child classes. Okay. Now, the place where it gets used, we'll have to go create our. We don't have a controller for app user. One of the things that you can do is, maybe I should actually show this to you, because students end up doing this and then you'll end up having errors. So let's deliberately do this, and maybe if you know this error, you will then be able to fix it. So let's say we want to generate a controller for the application user with the entity framework. What should I do? What's the simplest thing I'll do? Right click and add controller. And I'm going to create a controller with views using the entity framework. Okay, so okay, what's the model class? I'm generating this off of. Pardon? Identity model will be the. It's going to be the file name, but inside identity model there are these two. Application user is the name of the class. So if you choose application user and say add, okay, let's see, I'm going to rebuild this to make sure I don't have any build errors. Okay, let's see if I can now add a controller with Are you getting the same error? It does? Okay. It's very strange. Let's see. Okay. If it did build, if it did go through, and I don't know why this is not going through. Okay, if it did go through for you, what do you see below this? Do you see another DB set? You'll be seeing another DB set. Now, that's going to cause a problem because you have a built-in class called users. So there's a DB set which corresponds to users. So if you try to generate another connection to another class called application users, that's going to conflict with the pre-existing users DB set. So if this went through, what I would do is the other second public DB set, I will comment it out. So whatever it says, DB set application user, application users get set. If at all you do this, make sure you comment it out. Okay. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you do it. For those of you for whom it went through, did anyone else not have this created? Okay, so it's only my machine that did this. I'm not sure why it did this. But what I'm going to do is see if I can at least add a controller with read-write actions. I'm going to call this application users controller. Okay, so you will have an index in application users. Let's say that I'm going to call this, let's see, display, what did I call this method? User details. Okay. So go into this controller. If you auto-generated it, it's going to be a view result. Maybe I'll keep the action result of index. I'm going to create another view result, and this is what I want you to do. Call it get user details, or well, let's see, what shall we call it? Display user details. and I'm going to obviously go to the database to be able to get this. In your case, you probably have private, is it private DB? Application DB, it's called the class, application DB class, application DB, it's not recognizing it, so I need to have a using statement, using this is database or DB, so it's new, okay. So I want to get, the first thing that I want to get is, I need to get all the application users. So, so I'll say list of application user app users, and I have to get it from the database db dot users. Now, if you hadn't commented it out, this would show us there are two options. You'll have users and what else would you see? Application users. And so that's where the conflict would arise, and it would create an error. So db.users. We want to get all the users, so I'm just going to create it as a list of application users. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I need to return this view, so I'm going to say return a view with this list of application users. Okay, and inside of what I want to display, so I'm wanting to create a view here called display user details. So I'll just right-click on this method name, add view, and it's display user details. I'll just create it. I guess to make it easier, I'm just going to put two columns, so I'll just put well, it's not even two columns, it's just going to be one column, so I'll just put it as display user details as an empty view, and I'll just add it in. Okay, so view bag, display user details, that's the title. And one thing that you can do is, if you don't want to repeat everything, you can use whatever the view bag contains and say this. In this case, obviously, there's not much benefit, but if you add a lot of repetition of it. Okay, so what I want to do is set up a simple table, and I'll use a CSS class called table. You can use table loaded and so on, but the simplest is just table. Okay, and within that, I'm just going to have, in this case, I think just the, I'll have the user's full name, and which is all there in the details, so I'll just say user details. This is the header, so TR, and I can just use a TD or I think TH for a header, And I'll say user details. Okay. And then I have to set up the for each loop because I want to get multiple of these users. Okay, so at the very top, I need to reference the model, and it's the lowercase m, not the uppercase. So I want to reference which model do I want to reference here? Last name webapp.models. Which is the one that I want to go through? Which has the user details? Application user. Okay. Now I could just leave it as is, but that would be a problem. Why would this be a problem?
We also need the information from the child classes.
We want the child classes as well, but the problem is not so much the child classes as much as that if I just left it as is, what would happen? I think I could take away this and see if it just recognizes. No, it doesn't? Okay. Okay, but the problem is not, if I just use this, how many objects are available to me? What am I sending from the controller to this view? A list of application users, so multiple objects. So how do I say that the view is receiving multiple objects? Using this IEnumerable. So IEnumerable, and then within these angled braces or brackets, you indicate that it's going to bring. So this is required if you're dealing with multiple objects. And down here, I want to display all of the user's details. So I'm going to use the @ symbol to say this is C# for each. And I can say I'm looking inside the uppercase model. And you can use the generic variable, which will be referring to each of the objects inside application user. So each object inside application user is each user, I'm going to say each app user. For each of them, and I'm going to set it up very simply. I'm just going to say I want to display in a row I want to display what inside of each. At each app user dot. What do I display here? Okay, get user details. It's a method. And this is how polymorphism works. So what am I getting down here? It is the list of the parent class objects, right? Application user. So what tells it to display whatever the child, if it's a student object, let's say we have a total of, I think, 5 objects, is it? When I ran this ASP.NET users. Okay, there are 5 objects. There are 3 student objects, 2 instructor objects. Now, what I'm specifying here is that this is each of these objects is what? What type of object? It's an application user. So as far as this view is concerned, it's receiving a set of 5 application user objects. So how does it know which method to use? What tells it which method to use? It's not going to be the role, it was just the fact that we used the polymorphic concept. So it's going to basically say, it's going to ask this object, what question do you think it's going to ask this object? As it's in the view, as each object is coming through this loop, it's going to ask what question? Very good. Did you hear what Abdul Leela said? Yeah, it's going to ask the question, what type of application user are you? And or could it make it more, it doesn't even have to say, so it can, in this case we have 2 classes inheriting, we could have 10 different classes, so it's going to basically have what subtype or subclass object are you? And as soon as it tells the answer, it's going to find the method that belongs to that particular class and use that. So instead of having 2 or 3 different types of methods to call, so imagine if it couldn't ask that question, what do you need to do here? You have to have those if statements. If object whatever type, if app type, user type is student, then call one method. If it is instructor, call another method. And the place where it becomes really tricky is, let's say you then say, I want to also have another type of user, let's say advisor. So let's say you bring in a 3rd type of user, an advisor user. So if you didn't have inheritance and polymorphism, what would you have to do? When you bring in the 3rd type, you have to add this code here. You have to add extra code on the model side. But if you had inheritance with polymorphism, what do you need to change in the client code? Nothing. That's the strength of polymorphism, because the client code has no change whatsoever, because if there's another type of subclass, it just asks, so what subclass type are you, and it calls that polymorphic method. So this is a really powerful concept whenever you're working with a lot of different client classes or client applications using it, and it also keeps, it allows you have your base class remaining as is, so we don't have to make a change to into application user will remain as is, your student class will remain as is, your instructor class will remain as is. All that you are doing is extending the application by bringing in a new class. Okay. So one of the keys whenever you work with applications is not to make changes to existing code, like going inside of or something that's already working, but you're just extending with an entirely different class, which is a very clean way of extending. Okay, so now if you were asked what's polymorphism, would you be able to explain it? Yes? No? Okay, so to really, well, what I'm going to have you do is to bring in another class called advisor, to extend it and make something unique to advisor. What's unique to advisor? What's unique to an advisor, which is different from student and instructor? What's that? If they only have access to everything, I'll show you. Access, you can give role-based access. The only reason you would want to here in terms of anything, any attribute that distinguishes them. Okay. As far as access, since we only have about 20 minutes left, let me go into that access, and then we'll come back to this to see how this works. So in terms of access, role-based access, go to your configuration, into the seed method. Okay. What we are going to do is bring in two roles. So one role is going to be for student, and a second role for instructor. So I'm going to add in, so right here, just before I populated the students, I'm going to bring in a role. It's called identity role. It's the name of the identity role. You have to go to the using statement. So using ASP.NET Identity Entity Framework. So it connects to the entity framework to the database. So I'm just going to call this object as a role object, and the constructor allows you to give a role name. So the first role I'm going to provide is that of a student, and then I need to send it to the database. How do I send it to the database? Okay, save changes sends it to the database, but I also need to send this value to the database. What's the table to which I want to send this role name? I want to send it to ASP.NET, where is that? Roles, this table here, right? So to send it to the table, right now we are saying save whatever changes to the database, but we are not saving this data to the database. So how are we changing it or saving it? We have to send it to that particular table, which is context dot roles dot add. And what are we adding? This role. Okay. Okay. So this is, if we just updated the database, it would just add this in. But we also need to connect each of these students to those roles. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not sure if you can do this inside of populate students. You might be able to, but what I'm going to do here is basically go through this list of students and connect them to the student role. And for that I have to do a little bit of work. I'll say identity user role, because it's connecting the user with the role. I'm going to call this user role. And there are multiple students, so I'm going to have to do a for each loop. I'm going to say each student in student list. Okay, and I need to go over user role, goes new role, and the reason I have to do it is I need to get an ID, the same, whatever the student, where is my student? Right here, this role ID. So I need to get the role dot ID. Okay. Okay, so well, first I need to get user role. This is the many-to-many relationship. So user role dot role ID is the ID for this role here, and the second piece is user role dot user ID. And where do I get the user ID from? What am I trying to connect? I'm trying to connect the student object to the student role, right? So one piece of the many-to-many is the role ID. What's the second piece? The student ID, and I have to get it from each student.id. So I've connected the two, and after I connected the two, I need to basically add it to the as far as the this probably will not be, it's going to be fine on the database, but since it's many-to-many association, one of the things in the object-oriented world is for each student, if there are multiple roles, what do I need to do? Roles.add, I want to add this user role. Okay. So this becomes a list of user roles belonging to this particular student if they are in multiple roles. Now, similarly for the other side is for the role. The role is going to have a list of users, right? Each role, the student role, might have multiple users. So I'm going to say add the, what am I going to add to that? Who is in that role? So I'm going to basically say these are two lists, but the main thing is the many-to-many association between the user and the role. Okay. Once I have it, what do I need to do? Save it to the database context.save changes. Okay. So that creates my students with their roles. I need to do the same thing for the instructor. So since I have less than 10 minutes, I'll do something that I don't recommend highly, but copy paste. So I'm basically copying. I cannot repeat this role, the data types. I'm just taking role, this spot here, the next line, and the next line to send it to the database. I'm going to do it just before the list of instructors. So the only thing I have to change here is what? Change it to instructor. And then I need to also take this set of statements, the for each and the context save changes. And I'm going to do the same thing for all the instructors. So just below the list of instructors, I copied this segment, and this becomes, instead of each student, it's each instructor. Okay. And I need to change each student to instructor. Okay, so this is setting up the role connection. And going back to what River said, he said, if I wanted an advisor with access to all functionality, if I just wanted to have an advisor, I would do what? I'll create another role called advisor, and I can just create an application user object. I don't need to create, like, it will be a general application user, right? I don't need to have it as a student or instructor and then connect the advisor role to that object. So you can, I'm going to have you think about how you'll do that, but for now we have these, and I want to update the database, so I'm going to again revert it back and move it forward so that I have the connection established to the database. Okay. Go into the database, make sure to check the roles. You should see the two roles, instructor and student. In addition, you should go to user roles, and if you select the role, you should see the many-to-many connection between the two. Okay. And obviously, if this didn't happen, there is something that you need to fix here. How many of you are seeing this connection here? Only a few of you? Okay. I'm going to run this now. Debug, start without debugging. I want to see the list of users. I don't have it listed here. So if I want to get that list, I need to go to my application users. So this controller, if I want to get that, it's application users instead of home. That's the name of the controller. Okay. And the name of the method and the view is display user details. Okay, so do you see this here? These three users who are in the role of a student, you get their role. What's missing here? We wanted the full name, right? So why isn't the full name being displayed? The most likely reason, let's see if that is the reason. I need to go inside identity model. Okay, what mistake did I make? It's very obvious. I did all this supposedly sophisticated stuff and then make, yeah, Cody?
You get plus equals right there.
Yeah, plus equals. And of course I can get a lot more about username and email and so on, but I just wanted this. I obviously missed the plus equal. But beyond that, there are a couple of other things I want to discuss. We have how many? 5 more minutes. Where does security come in? So the changes have to be made on the controller, so I'm going to close this out. So let's say for the course registration, okay, so where is my index of controller course registrations? Okay, so do you want a student to be able to see all the other students' course registrations? The answer is most likely not, right? So the index should be seen, let's say, by instructors or advisors. So the simplest way to prevent the index from being seen by the students would be to set a property here. Let me see, what's the property called? Authorize. So I want to authorize only the it's role-based authorization. So I could say, you can see I can either specify roles or specific users, and also the specific order in which I do that. So I'll say roles, and what's the role I want to allow here? Only those who are in the instructor role, okay? And then I can also do something later, but for now I'll go with just preventing students from being able to see this. So if I run this, okay, so if I now go to, where is it, registration, I think, what does it do?
Requires you to log in.
Requires me to log in. So if I try, and obviously you want to provide some message, so here I'll use test instructor because I know that's one username. Well, that's test instructor at wvu.edu, and then this is test instructor. So I log in. Okay, why do you think it's giving this error here? Student name, that's where it's breaking. It's breaking in the view. So what happened in the view to break the application? How many of you know what happened here? Yeah, it's instead it is in the parent with this user full name, so that's in the column. So there are two places where we reference the student name. So if you make the changes in the index, this is in the index for the course registrations index. So the two places where student name is replaced by user full name. If you do that, it should display it. You can see that you've logged in as an instructor. And this is obviously one piece. The other is, as a student, you still might want to see your own registrations, right? You might not want to see might not want to be allowed to see all the students' registrations, but let's say you're a test student, you want to see your registrations. So what would you do for that? So you cannot do it on the same method, but what I'll do is I'll just copy paste this here. So let's say so instead of index, I'll change it to so the result is student registrations. So this is particular to that one particular student. Okay. So what would I have to change here if I want it to be just for one particular student? This is for all the students. So when I look for course registrations for one particular student, what would you do? Use the where clause. What's the where clause to do? Lambda expression C dot student ID should be some particular student ID, right? Okay. And the place where we get this from, who will the student be? This should be a student who has logged in, right? So I'm going to say user ID is going to be, you have a built-in clause called user dot identity dot where do I get the ID from? There's a method called user.identity.get user ID. So there has to be a method called get user ID. So why do I not have this? Okay. Okay, there has to be a using statement with ASP.NET user ID. I'm sorry, this here I called it user ID. Well, okay. So if you make the connection here, it has to go to user ID. This is the value. Okay. Okay. So initially the reason you didn't get the user ID method was because this using statement was missing. Okay. So you have to bring that in, and I called it student ID, but whatever you call it, user ID or student ID. So this is going to restrict to course registrations just for a particular user, and if you want to make it even more particular to students, you can then set an authorize on roles. So the authorization here will force the user to be in the role of a student, but to be able to get any data, it is for a particular student. So you have to be logged in as that student to be able to view it. So if you were to run this now, I guess you're pretty much out of time, you will have to log in as a student, and once you log in as a student, you can see it, but also you'll have, once you've created a new controller, what's not there. You can try using this index again to send it to the index, but how do you send it to this index here? How can you reuse it? Does anyone know how you can reuse this? We want to reuse that index view without having to create another one for this. And you can send it in the controller view name, so you can send it, I think, with just the string view name. So index, comma, whatever you're sending over. Okay, try this out. When you come next class, just make sure that you have this, and also post it onto your Visual Studio Team Services. Next class, I will have you spend significant amount of time on your project, but also I will check your project and come and discuss it with each of the groups. So please make sure that all your team members are here next class. You're sitting next to them so that I can come and discuss with you. Okay. Try this out. If you have any questions, ask me beginning of next class. There are many pieces that you have to connect together here.
Regarding team services, they have been helpful.
Okay. I think one of the things that there was an update, I think, to Visual Studio, which adds Azure in. You can ask Mike. He actually did this, and he said that's Mike or Preston. They said that was the one missing piece
Just an update
for Azure to Visual Studio. Yeah. Just ask him about that.
I'm trying to roll back the database. I was getting that there are multiple object types not supported.
Yeah, this is because you have both Digitomics is out here and
Yeah. I have it pulled up.
Okay, so here, when you click for you, it generated the right here.
I think I was ahead of you, and I tried to make that already.
No, the issue was, because see, the thing is,
so you shouldn't have any application user connected right
yeah,
there.
because it's automatically connected.
Where is
Yes.
Hi. Okay. So I had my individual posted to the singular My project, and that was working. And then I went to publish it under the team one, so that it was all there. You know how you want it. It won't work. Like every time I go to publish it, it will automatically open that project in that connection. It won't open there.
Okay.
It's like physically won't open. And if I do hard manually go file open, it will automatically connect to my other connection.
Okay, the other one. That,
Yeah.
okay.
So this whole class period, Preston and my both have been trying to fix it, and it won't fix. And I think that Preston accidentally might have messed up my other one in the process of trying to help me fix the team one. So I don't know how to. I feel like the best way to is like delete all of my everything I have so far and restart, but I have no clue how to do that.
Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll go over it with both the group and the individual projects and see what is or is not working, and if it's
I just
not
don't even know,
working,
like, Preston went into my individual one separately, and now all the code that I added there is gone now, too. So, I don't know what he deleted, or, you know, because he was, you know, trying to jerry-rig something together, and so, I don't know. Now both of them aren't working, so...
Well, I'll see whether that's the same